Hi, everyone. Happy last day of spring. It's a solstice tonight to welcome in summer, so it's an auspicious day. This is Jamie Cloudburst, and yep, that's good. Whoever muted themselves is good. We want to stay on mute unless we're talking, but we'll go through introductions and overview in a sec. So try to mute yourself if you have noise in the background. But I'm going to let my colleague TJ Winfield just go through a little bit of housekeeping, how we're going to run the GoToWebinar to make it active. TJ?
Yep. Hi, everyone. This is TJ Winfield from Cloudburst. Just a quick little orientation in case you haven't used GoToWebinar already. I think I'll be taking everyone off mute. We're hoping for this session to be as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions, you can talk over the phone. But just as Jamie said, if you could please keep yourselves on mute when you're not talking, just so that way we can avoid any background sound or anything like that. It'll make it easier for us to communicate on our end. And if you have any questions, you can either ask them over the phone or your computer speakers, or you can also use the Q&A questions tab on your control panel. If you'd rather ask something that way, we'll be monitoring that as well.
I don't know what's going to mute our... Woo! We can hear background noise. So it is easier to be on your phone if you have the choice, but sometimes when you're on your phone, you're traveling, so we get that piece of it. But sometimes when you're on the computer, there's a feedback loop that happens when you're on the computer phone. So most of us are always using our iPhone or Android phone to call in. So we're going to try with introductions and see, taking everyone going off mute. It looks like it's not a lot of us, so it should be okay. Because I cannot see actually the list of attendees, I can't, and we don't know exactly everyone signed in. We're just going to open up our phones and go through introductions. We'll start with the Cloudburst team. So everyone probably knows me on the call. It's Jamie Taylor, and super excited to be starting off a community practice here. And I'm going to pass it over to Sarah.
Hey guys, my name's Sarah Khan. I'm also a technical assistance provider here at Cloudburst and work with communities to leverage local data to really drive system improvements. And yeah, I'm super excited to meet and to learn from all of you about how you're having success doing that in your community. So it's great to be a part of this group. Thanks.
And again, this is TJ Winfield from Cloudburst, just helping Jamie and Sarah with logistics. Jamie, I can go, if you still can't see the list of attendees, I can just go down alphabetically if that works, or if you'd rather just have everyone go voluntarily.
Oh, no, you can do that. You can do that.
Okay.
That would help everyone.
So yeah, so the first on my list is Becky. Becky, are you there?
Good afternoon. This is Becky with the Planning Council. Glad to be on the call.
And then next is Joseph.
Hi, this is Joseph Jensen. I'm an HMIS administrator in Utah. So glad to be a part of this.
Thanks, Joseph. And next up is Julie.
Hi, this is Julie Dixon, also with the Planning Council. Thank you.
Hey, Julie and Becky, because this is a cross-country site, so just define where the Planning Council is.
Sorry, we're in Norfolk, Virginia, and COC and HMIS lead for different COCs in the region.
Thanks.
Thanks, Julie. Next up on the list is Margot.
Hey everybody, this is Margot Ackerman from Homeward in Richmond, Virginia.
And last that I see is Timothy.
Hey all, my name is Timothy Hoffman. I'm a professor at St. Louis University, and we're working in a regional effort to draw together services across St. Louis.
Thank you. Is there anyone else on the line that I haven't gotten to yet? It looks like Renee Pope is calling in now, so Jamie, maybe give her another minute, and then we can have her introduce herself later if you want to start.
Sure. So you'll get Renee in. So we have St. Louis and Richmond and Norfolk area and Utah, and Renee is actually from Prince George's County in Maryland. And all of you, except for Joseph, have been a part of, and also Renee, have been a part of the data maturity training. All of you are in sites that have access. Cloudburst and their data teams have access to data, and you have some data tools that you already are using or will be using soon in the near future. And we're working with, I think Margot's the senior person here for the last year and a half in Richmond on developing the dashboards, as you know, and then developing the community practice tool and training to make sure there's uptake on the use of the data to move it into decision making. So not our goal here is the arc from data to action and data to decision making, not data for precision. So we up from our data training, what we recognize is we'll go on site. We just did this in St. Louis, though I never made it to on-site, but Tim was there on-site, and I was virtual doing the training because of the high winds in Atlanta. And but the training itself is a very intensive 4 hours that models the many components that we've put together in a data to action cycle, and it really is incorporated to represent a train the trainer model. And so we recognize in order to make sure that people actually use the tools, use the data training tools, and actually develop their own local network using these tools, we sought to develop this community of practice, which we actually set up through HUD, and they have blessed us on multiple levels. And this is the first kickoff. This is really a trial balloon. We have people, we booked out 3 dates for this. And our vision is actually that you will help us, this small group will help us in opening this up to a wider network in the fall. So we do envision doing a wider network with more community practices in that string, so to speak, maybe 6 of them. But so this is the first one. We're going to do an overview, and we're really going to do this as partners by the 3rd community practice, getting your input on what to add, what to take away, what could work better, so that we can open this up to more people and really build a deeper network with it. So ideally, one of the things we model on this is an introduction where you're telling a little bit about yourself, because the container we're building is virtual. This is ideally, community practice is developing a community of learners together and teachers. And building containers really takes that humanness, the human grounding. I've actually run a number of community practices. TJ on the call here was for 2 years, at least monthly, we ran an office hour for SAMHSA. Now it's a time program, which is focused on preventing violence and connecting mental health systems with school systems. So we would meet monthly with about 20 to 25 evaluators from 20 states. And we would do something similar with presenting out highlights, presenting out tools, and supporting peer-to-peer sharing. And it was really, really hard to actually develop an active community of learners, though when we would meet at conferences once a year, there was a huge, it's like a network, an invisible network had been being built because there was a huge knowing and familiarity, but the actual sharing was really, really hard. We scheduled the agendas to allow for highlights and spotlights, as we'll do here, but the actual sharing we recognize is not simple because this is virtual and people don't know yet who each other is. So we're gonna try to figure out how to do that, even with your input and thoughts on this as we go forward, because the only success we're going to get out of here really is really off of that belief or maxim guiding this whole thing is that everybody is a teacher and everybody is a student. And so we're going to experiment with this forum and collect feedback as we go. And the other thing I want to say, since I guess I have the microphone open, I'm going to share me. We have had a really great planning team within Cloudburst to pull this off, including Sarah. TJ actually was not on the planning team. He stepped in because one of our planning team members is no longer with us at Cloudburst, actually. And another planning team member was called off today with another project that they're a consultant that they're working on that took a higher priority. And then a third planning team member actually had to go to Europe because of a partner that was very ill. So what was left, honestly, I'm going to be honest, is me putting together a lot of pieces without partners that in the very last minute. So we're also going to also have patience with this as we go forward. And really we're setting up what we think will be a really interactive framework going forward, and also utilization of technology in a way that will help us develop that community of learning. And we'll get to what that could look like as we go forward. So really this purpose, again, I just talked about this, and you know, it's not about talking, it's about doing, right? That's what our training's all about, is that experiential framework. And so setting this up virtually is going to be our challenge to make it something that is about experiential sharing and learning. But that is our goal here. And we have, I think, maybe 3 more people who joined the call since we started. So TJ, can you let people introduce themselves who were not introduced already?
Robin Gray.
Sure.
Georges County Department of Social Service.
TJ, I didn't catch your name. Sorry.
I think that was Robin. Robin, do you mind repeating that? Sorry.
Robin Gray, Prince George's County Department of Social Services.
Hey, Robin. Welcome.
Thanks, Robin.
And Tino Paz, HMIS data analyst at Central Florida Continuum of Care.
There's Tino. Hey, Tino. Was there one more?
I think Andrea Miller was the third, but it looks like she stepped off the webinar.
Okay. Okay, great. So for Robin and Tina, we also have Timothy Huffman from St. Louis region, Margot from Richmond, Julie Dixon and Becky from the Planning Council Norfolk area, and Joseph Jensen from Utah. And we're just going over again what our goals are and how we're going to set up more interactive structures that we think will help build. The key here is cross-sector, sharing learning between all of you, not just singular talking like I've been doing now for 15 minutes. So I'm going to keep talking since I have to just do this overview. And what we're really doing here is setting up this overarching rubric of data maturity. We're really supporting what all of these building blocks are. Sarah put this slide together. she's going to recognize it. I should have given you credit somewhere on the slides there. So I adapted our most latest slide deck, as you'll see, though I didn't tell you. So this slide, though, is a really wonderful slide representing what we all recognize as building blocks for this term of data maturity. And data maturity is really this use of data in a way that actually improves our system outcomes in multiple settings, multiple parts of the ecosystem, across the provider levels, across the data leadership, across the training, across our cross-sector partnerships. So it's this large arc. Data maturity is the overarching term we're using now, but it's all of these building block components. And this training, so this is our, this training is really representing what we want. What we recognize is over on the left, what we're setting up here are these leadership community practices, right? But we want to recognize that across the country and inside of each one of your COCs, you have existing leadership networks that are already sharing ideas across, and there's other types of mini teams that are developed for a problem around data that they're coming together around, or the lack of data. And we just want to recognize that you are a part of many, many, many parts of this, these leadership networks. And we're hoping, again, to seed here tools that can be used in all the networks that you're in, going across. And also what we hope you each will be thinking about is setting up your own local network to be modeling the pieces of this that make sense for your own trainings. So I'm going to stop here and see how we do this. Like, this is our tricky part virtually, but if we could just do a round robin of each one of you giving a sense of what you think might be a hoped for benefit out of this community of practice. You can see them here, but if we could just share, I'm going to start with Tino. I have your names now, so I can call on you. I'm going to start with Tino because he's been thinking about this for a long time, putting into action his own local data to action practices. So Tino, what might you be hoping out of this community of practice as a benefit?
Well, the primary benefit is just having an audience that's in the same arena. I work with HMIS data, and I'm actually almost sometimes too close to it, and need to back up and be able to talk with other people who are kind of facing similar situations, because the practice of the data maturity, which is really an aspirational, a very important aspirational goal, because we have data all around us, but we don't even ever think about how our relationship to that data in terms of our trust in it, and also being able to use it to help our planning purposes. It gets very, very intricately involved, a lot of moving pieces, and not being able to communicate or share the struggles is kind of very isolating. So for me, one of the benefits is kind of having that community to talk about shared concerns.
How about Margot? I'm going to call on the people that have worked with us longer. How about you, Margot? What are you thinking?
Well, we had an HMIS committee meeting yesterday, and we were talking about data quality and what kind of incentives there should be for good data quality and what sort of enforcement that there should be. And one of the things that came up was that people thought that the data maturity training was kind of a good incentive to help people really care more about their data being of good quality and getting a better understanding of how it's actually used. We recently started prioritizing emergency shelter, rapid rehousing, and permanent supportive housing. And we do that based on data that comes out of HMIS. So we don't have problems with missing data, which I think a lot of times that's the first place your mind goes when you think about data quality. We have issues with people not entering their data in a timely manner, so that interferes with our ability to rely on the data to actually do day-to-day work. So we talked about doing a better job of making that connection between the data people like me and the case managers who are, doing the actual face-to-face client work. And I thought that was kind of cool that they would look at a training as sort of a reward, and that it would also sort of reinforce what you want people to do. So that's what I'm looking forward to doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in part it's a reward, right? Because they're engaged in both the analyzing piece and the prioritizing piece, moving to action piece. Like they're engaged in that full cycle. But that's super exciting. That's great. How about you, Tim? You've been I know new at this in St. Louis with but you've been doing and teaching similar processes in support of this. So conceptually, what are your thoughts on what you want to see as a benefit out of this?
Yeah, I guess, thinking in terms of what's the value of us spending our time together, I think that being able to share tools, to share problems, to share insights, and to kind of collectively brainstorm, I guess that's what, I hope to get. I hope to learn a whole lot, because y'all are way ahead of me with regard to a lot of things that are like specific to HMIS. But I'm really excited. Also thinking about how, research methodologies and inquiry and question asking undergird these things. So that's what I hope to also bring.
Great. And how about Julie from Planning Council?
I think what Tim said was very helpful, because some of it was what I wanted to say. I guess I can add to that. There's just seems to be within even, the group of HMIS users, as well as the program managers and leaders who gather in the, executive level committees where you're making decisions around programs and writing funding, the collaborative applications and from both state and federal funds, things like that. There's still so little understanding of what we present as the data and how that really can be interpreted. And any skills that we can get or tips we can get from this kind of, forum to help us bring that forward and keep making things very simply for everybody. Margot and I presented together with Kathy Robertson last week in Virginia at a conference, and Margot was showing the test, the pilot data dashboard for Richmond, and she's very good at explaining things very simply as we went through it and making it real for everybody. We did have, it seemed like, a room full of people who got it. They were in data all day long and making decisions using data, at least the majority of them. And so it was a very good session, but that kind of simple language, making things real for people, is what I would like to bring out of this and be able to move it forward to a much larger group, because it still feels like within the two COCs that we manage, there's very few that really can look at data and understand the story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And how about Becky, your counterpart there in Norfolk?
Hi, I apologize if my throat is scratchy. I think I'm coming down with a cold. But I do echo a lot of what has already been said. And we've done a lot of work trying to build some of this foundational understanding of data with a lot of our COC partners. But as Julie said, a lot of them still just don't seem to get it. And we've worked a lot to help them understand the importance of, like what Margot was saying about data quality and getting HMIS data entered in a timely manner. We've held a learning lab for just our emergency shelter providers to try to help them see the connections between the data that they enter on a day-to-day basis and how it's reported at the system level for system performance measures, and how that impacts, the amounts of funding that we can request and things like that. So more tips and tools, and really getting people beyond this is a requirement of HUD, so we have to put this in the system, but we don't really do anything with it beyond that. And even seeing how important, having to directly export things from the system and upload into Sage, and not being able to manipulate their APRs just on a very basic level that they used to be able to do. I think people are starting to realize, oh, if it's not an HMIS, it didn't happen. I think I heard that recently at NHSDC. And so I'm like, yes, this is what we've been trying to get people to realize, that HMIS should be the foundation for your grant writing, your strategic planning at your agency level as well as the system level. And we shouldn't be depending on random spreadsheets that everyone is keeping back at the office, because we can't make good decisions based on that as a community. So just helping people make those connections and helping us learn from you all and other partners across the country what you're doing and what you've seen as being really successful.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Joseph, I know that you're new to Utah. After we did some dashboard work, we actually did do a data training out there before you were there. But do you have a sense? You've had enough of the exposure, I think, to have a sense of what you would want to see as a benefit from our time together.
Yeah, I wasn't part of the last training, but I was working with in homeless services at a provider at that time, and so I've been around it and kind of seen those challenges. And really, it's an echo of what everyone else was saying. Is just I'm hoping to learn kind of how other areas are approaching these things with helping people understand the why behind the data that they put in. I feel like that's the thing that we spend the most time trying to articulate to people, because they understand what they need to collect, but it's always something that is more of a burden on them than something they see as a tool to help, because they don't understand what this data is actually going to do for them. So helping communicate that of this is why we're collecting these things, and like we said before, how having that data in a database is going to be able to directly benefit their clients by strengthening their applications and by helping them make better administrative decisions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great. And Robin, we haven't done any of this data training, and you don't have dashboards either. So you're in a newbie spot, but nonetheless, I think you've been working with data around homelessness for a while. So any thoughts on what you would add as a benefit to this community practice, what you'd want to see?
I mean, there's a lot of things I want to see. I don't know if, and I was just thinking right off the top of my head when I start hearing some of the things that you're talking about. I think the problem is that it just depends on where you're located and what the issues may be in your particular jurisdiction. I know that I've been working with data for almost, I don't know, it's almost hard to say. I want to say I think it's been 18 years. So one of the biggest problems that I know that we have is definitely timelessness, and that's been, and like I said, I've been dealing with it for 18 years. And I think the reason why we have a problem with timeliness is because people who will put in good data already have too many other duties. And so the data is sort of like on the back end. It's not on the front end because of all the other duties that they may have. So, I don't know what could help me benefit, I mean, what we need is just money for people to just put in data, to put in good data. And that seems like that's just a component that's missing. You're driving, I want your data to say this, but there's no money to pay people to put that in. So, and then the next thing I would like to see really happen is folks making decisions on the data that they do have, even though it may be an issue with timeliness. A lot of times it's still this. It's basically the same type of need, though. It does exist. And for homelessness, we're just kind of touching a surface based on what we see or what's given to us with a real small population. But I don't really think that our numbers are really actually telling the true story of what really is out there, what really is this. So, just the reality piece of it. But I mean, so far that's the only thing that I can add based on my situation. So until I find out a little bit more about what y'all going to teach me or what kind of what kind of benefits I'm going to get out of attending this, that'll be great.
Yes, and I do think there's going to be ideas shared and also hands-on tools shared and approaches shared that can help with connecting data to its utilization, and which also then impacts how people feel about even putting in their data on a timely basis or not. Is I think Becky was talking about earlier also, just like, and I heard the same, connecting the why and the how, and ultimately supporting data-based decision making, which does take data, but also takes this framework. So I left in this slide because I wanted you all to understand a little bit about the metaphor thing, just for a minute. So we do have a vision that there will be someday these community practices across the country that are intersected. So as we said earlier in the slide, we recognize that there are existing community practices that are out there. There are things that are leadership networks that don't call themselves community practice. There are emerging local networks that are focused around an issue. And what we want to do is just conceptually with this community practice as an example of that internally is within a community practice, we want to set up using this metaphor. So this is literally a picture of these are trees. All these green dots are trees. So this is a forest ecosystem, and this is actually mapping out how these trees have shared their nutrients, their carbon, their nitrogen, their phosphorus across with other trees in their ecosystem. A lot of science has gone into that process, connecting these mycelium and mycorrhiza networks, which are the fungus, the mushrooms of a part of that mycelium network that we can see visibly. But underneath, there's this entire network that's intersecting a tree forest ecosystem, and there's a sharing of nutrients that is really vividly becoming an incredible metaphor for all of us, because they are actually protecting the outer edges of their own forest ecosystem across species, across types of bushes as well as trees, with nutrients when climate change impacts and there's tree cuts and the trees that are on the outer edge are not getting as much nutrients as they need. The larger trees and the big green nodes are the larger trees, literally, that are spreading out more nutrients, will send and push those nutrients out to those other nodes in different ways. And this network, it's really what we're doing as a fractal inside. So a fractal is something that's an exact representation on a smaller basis, like a fern. If you look at a fern, it's smaller and smaller and smaller. Every part of that fern you look at looks just like the larger fern itself. And our community practice is a fractal of this larger mycorrhizal network that we really do see as a metaphor for what we're doing here in our work here. So when people like Tim have more nitrogen, for instance, he's going to share that out to other parts of the network because their need for nitrogen they can't meet as well. And the same thing goes when Margot has more carbon and the nutrients going across. And we're making this visible because we want you to see what this is based on from our own belief model. That is really our construct underlying this work is that all of us have different types of nutrients. All of us are doing something better and worse in our COC framework and our use of data for ending this very complex issue of homelessness. And we want to build these networks and strengthen them so that you are supporting each other in this way. And this is really cool, like to make it really clear. As you could tell, I really love this metaphor. But when I was reading about it, what I read about was in the northwest forest, when the salmon run, the bears go into the river because they just can flip the salmon out of the river into the trees, and then they go and eat it later. So they just go into the river and they're flipping the fish off into the bank. And so scientists were able to map where those fish landed because not the bears eat all of the fish and they leave some of them. And the fish, as they decompose, are actually very high containers of nitrogen. And so they're able to map out where the nitrogen from those trees that were near where they actually received it, right, the receiver trees, where the nitrogen then reached out into that ecosystem that was sourced from the fish that the bear had flipped out on the bank. And they found over up to half a mile away, the nitrogen in over 50% of those trees' nitrogen sometimes is from that nitrogen source from the salmon that was around the tree that was closer to the rivers. So just visibly, it's what we hope to build in a small way, and then keep growing it and keep supporting it, because you'll be doing this, you'll become a fractal within your own system by what you're doing and setting up and sharing is knowledge. The same principles of they're also nutrients and how people pick up and adapt and are going to share back their learnings. So we're hoping this is a model that just continues to repeat itself in this biomimicry way. And then we can map out our own nutrient exchange, right? Someday that'll be a research project that we can do actually and get published, get famous. But this is our vision, honestly, of where we are now and where we hope to go with the larger network system. So here we're going to jump in. So for those of you who haven't seen it, we're going to jump in to the data to action cycle, and you all have it. You all will have it. This is a URL that we've developed that supports our training work, and inside of this URL is a lot of material that's iterative. We've been adding on as we go. When we first did this training, Richmond would have, even since we did it in Richmond and Norfolk, which just a couple of months ago, we've actually added on 2 new sections in there that are really very, very cool. One on secondary data sets and the use of secondary data sets for decision making and actually sharing what that is. And we've also done a deeper focus dive into data limitations. So this URL is actually the data to action playbook that we're sending out to each of you that you'll have. This you can download and use these exercises and directions. This is set up to be really a kind of a facilitated manual for the trainers. And that's a very loose term, right? But for all the folks on this call, for sure, to use and adapt in your own way. So you can't load back into this URL, thank goodness, but you can create your own folder and adapt whatever tools you want. You'll see in the next you're going to have the URL, but we will continue to be adapting this. One of the things, for instance, this particular PowerPoint is not the latest PowerPoint, but this URL will get updated with the latest PowerPoint next week. And so you'll see this change over time. When we add in a new exercise, we'll be sharing it across, and we'll also continue to add this. This will be active for you to use forever, whatever that means. But again, this is a really critical framework that we're doing here based on this sense that everyone's a teacher, everyone's a student, that really came from Paulo Freire here. And we really, like, the philosophy part is important if it's something that fits for you. If it doesn't fit for you, then don't use it. Like, this is about adapting and adopting that which makes sense for you. So the URL here has each section. It follows the overall PowerPoint of the training, and each section has the materials in it. These materials here, the knowledge briefs, are one of the very active as far as being updated. We hope to update these on a quarterly basis and be adding. Margot actually at our last training, or one of our calls actually, listed out a number of topics on knowledge briefs that we'll be doing in the next 6 months and adding on to here. So our knowledge briefs, we break them down as system knowledge briefs. And for Joseph and Robin, who have not been to these trainings, the trainings, and you will, in Prince George's, we will be doing a training once we access the data for dashboards, but I'm not sure about Utah again, but the training itself and the process of the training, we can go through. I'm happy to actually walk you through it, Joseph one-on-one, or Joseph and Robin, because it is, I think, an important framework for these calls to have that. Most of the people have been on it and actually helped co-facilitate it in some cases. So for Robin and Joseph, if you want to send me an email, we'll set up a time where we actually walk more deeply into the process of the training so you can actually get a feel for it. These are all the materials that support that process. And the materials themselves, the knowledge briefs, are a really important framing, as we know, because it really helps set a baseline understanding, as was said earlier, how our leadership doesn't necessarily have the same understanding of the issues we're facing. The data doesn't necessarily point to that understanding. So the knowledge briefs help create a baseline of understanding around really important topics that we're all dealing with. We have system knowledge briefs and program knowledge briefs, as you'll see. So you're going to have homework this week, which is really to go through this URL and get to know it. Like, you don't have to, I'm going to go on the PowerPoint here, but really get to know what each of these different sections are. And they follow the overall training PowerPoint, which we'll send out as a separate link. It is also in here, but again, this one hasn't been updated as we want it to be on all of these. But these handouts, active listening handouts, are really critical training takeaway. The performance culture self-assessment tool in and of itself is an important training tool. And the goal will be for you guys to go through the URL piece by piece. And there will be, and hopefully will be, some tools that you like, that spark your interest, and that you want to actually explore with in your community in between now and July 11th, which is our next community practice. So this is the core of the work, which everyone can remember. It's the data exploration with the cases, the prioritization of action, data uses and limitations. This would be very, very ambitious if you wanted to take on applying this. But you could, if you wanted to just focus on one area, you could. Anyway, I'm a one of 7, and this is what I want to say. Like, it wasn't my job to fix this, actually. That's what I want to say. But anyway, this URL will be updated soon, because we actually have the chronically homeless data case problem to put out there, and we're not doing this one at all. But as you'll see, you'll have the updated one. We have a rapid housing knowledge brief. But these are in here for you to go through and look at, and to choose one that you feel most connected to. Maybe you actually only want to use the priority setting and problem solving. You already have an issue, and maybe you just want to use this one tool, which is a really, really, really good tool in and of itself. If you're focused on some issue, even if it's a data quality issue, and there's different problem context around them, but you can only work on one issue at a time. Maybe you just use the priority setting tool as your chosen tool for your homework piece, which is to just apply it in vivo with some working group of people, more than 2, in some way, shape, or form. Maybe you want to just apply the data maturity framework, or maybe you just want to use one knowledge brief. I wouldn't use more than one if you're doing the system ones. Maybe you just want to talk about housing risk with some group of people. And we're going to show a little bit more about that and how you can add updated information to that brief, actually. Or maybe you'll get really ambitious and want to walk through the storytelling process. People love this, and people all have stories to tell. If they have some data ideas, you get to incorporate, if you did the storytelling, you could incorporate a target area where you bring in the knowledge brief itself around that target area. Say it's rapid rehousing, and you're helping people craft a message. This is when you have data and you actually have a target audience that you want to actually get a message out to. So it's a process that can support you through that in developing your own data story. So these are all in there, and these are evaluations here, which you don't need to use. But there's 5 links here. There's underneath these links is a lot of data tools. The secondary data sets is something that will be in here also. Was supposed to be in here already. So that will be also the tools with the secondary data sets we'll also share for you. So the idea is to really go through this and get a sense of, again, pull out one thing that you want to use in your own community. So does that make sense for diving in with this?
So, question, so is this something that we take on personally, or is this something that we involve some of the COC in as well?
You can do it however you want. If you want to actually involve a COC person and they go through this together with you, I think that would be ideal. And they are learning it with you as a toolkit, and you're deciding, how do we start to use it?
So how are most people doing it? That's on the call. How did most of y'all do it?
They haven't applied it yet. They just went through the training where this was used.
Oh.
But anyway, how are you thinking, Tino, of doing your homework?
I have no idea. I'm trying to figure out when am I going to have time to even do the homework. That's what I'm trying to figure out. I ain't gonna lie to you. I'm gonna keep it real because I'll be here already until 9 o'clock at night. So I'm trying to figure out when will I find time to do the homework. And I think that for me personally, my weekends I'm involved in trying to get some of the matters I need to get done. That's personal for me, just as a person. Yeah. I mean, HMIS is all great and everything, but to tell me I got to take this home and do some homework.
No, we're not doing that. I suggest you do get some community people who might be interested, and you can assign them homework. So there you go. It's a train the trainer model. You can assign them the homework to do this if you don't have time. That's what I would suggest for you, Robin. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Robin, maybe some of the other people I think had the benefit too of going through the training first before having a look at this. So maybe in the first instance, it's just looking at the URL and perusing through the different sections, which is really modeled off the data maturity framework that some of the others went through, just to get a better sense of what's delivered.
So Tino, Margot, Becky, Julie, Tim, will you have time? Joseph, do you think you'll have time to just do a perusal and pick out one thing to apply between now and July 11th?
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely can, Jamie.
Okay, good. Margot, Tim, Planning Council, Becky.
I think we would have time to pick one. I don't know if we could promise to pull together a group and actually have gone through it. Maybe I misunderstood that, but we could at least take a look and pick one.
Yeah, but I think you could pick one that would be simple to just do with a few people. But that's great. That's a step forward. Ideally, there's an applied piece to it. But Joseph, how about you? We can go through it deeper if you want before you want to pick it out. It's up to you.
Yeah, I think we can pick something out, and at least with a small group, start working on that. Like was said, we'll see the NOFA just dropped, and there's some things like that that are complicated the next month, but we can definitely pick one out and do the best we can with it.
So that's all we want. We're not going to do anything big. But we do know everyone's busy, so setting it up so that there's then practice in what you're doing, because the tools here are not the only tools we want to support the use of course, but we do want to see the use of these that a lot has been gone into and will continue to develop. So the other URL we'll have from this community practice, we want to make sure that we actually save the PowerPoint like that we're presenting on now, and any other questions or framework or highlights that come out. So you can go back to this URL, which we're calling the D2A, we'll rename it D2A resources. And this will actually be loaded up with resources for from each session. So if you can't make the second section, the next call, you'd be able to go to this, and we'll send it out again as a URL link for people to look at the resources in it. So the D2A will say D2A resources. That's what this is. And the Data Action Playbook is the really the facilitator's module, right, of all these materials for the training. So the other thing we want to do on each call, so your homework will be to explore and obviously share. You'll also hopefully share with us one data issue that you're facing that we can also brainstorm together around for the second part of the call, like a peer sharing, to see how experience. So really, it's not. It could be any data issue but technology issues are not something that I don't think we can handle here. But definitely data utilization, data application would be any topic under that. Would be something to think about to bring in. That shouldn't take you long to do, right? Because you already have it and carry it. But we'll set up an agenda where that sharing will also happen. But after we share what tool you've picked up and how you experienced it along with the playbook. We'll also pick out a specific tool, which I think might be the secondary data set. Every time we've shared it now, as Tim witnessed also in St. Louis recently, people get really excited about it. So I think we can, Tim and I can actually present on the secondary data set tool, which is an a new addition for you guys. So you'll get a new tool from the training. You'll share a little bit about how you've applied data tools, and then share a data problem where there be peer input on just ad hoc. And then one last thing we want to have in each community practice is, this is my favorite piece in life, is sharing updated research, just one piece of updated research. So this is something that I use all the time. I don't know how many people are connected to this annual report, the State of the Nation's Housing, put out by the Harvard's Joint Center on Housing Studies. And so this just came out last week. So the URL is there. And look who is on this. This is June 19th. Actually, I think it's this week. There's my life right there. And I wanted to be there. Like, they invited people to come to the National Press Club. I don't know if they would have let me come in, but I wanted to be there because look who's on the program. Sean Donovan, right? If only he was the real HUD Secretary of HUD right now, or Secretary of all things right now. But anyway, this is a great lineup. This presentation would be worth listening to on your drive home. But what's really important is to download the report. So you'll find it as a download here. It's very easy to download. And in this report, this is organized incredibly well to give us an overview of housing market.
¿Hablaste con Marta? ¿Cómo le fue?
I don't know who's not talking, but we're on the call right now. One, is that Tina? Tina, listen, we can hear it. You're talking to somebody else, not us. So the chapter you need to look at is housing challenges, because that's the one that focuses on homelessness. And it's really great updated summaries of what's going on with renters who are cost burdened, and then also what's happening across the country in different markets and why, current reach of federal rental programs. This is data that we can use to help tell our story, though it may not reflect our existing housing market. It reflects the nation's housing market and the changes, and it's really well written. So, and you can see this is a full chapter, so it's also not, it's actually not that long. It's very accessible, right? This is it. So make sure you look at chapter 6 in this. And and just give an overview so check out the executive summary, but you are all coming up with reports and writing and presenting and PowerPoints of where or why homelessness is increasing or what to expect down the pike. And this is going to be some good background housing risk information that will be very valuable. And it's hot off the press. This week, literally this week, posted on the website. So do folks think, I need feedback, do folks think that they might use this resource?
This is Julie, and yes, I actually really like that report. So thank you for bringing it up and pointing out what's really most important about it.
Thank you, Julie. So anyone else going to use it? One more person.
Yeah, I'll take it.
I don't know if I count since I work with Julie, but yeah, I was thinking the same thing. It looks really great.
Good. I know Margot will use it because she uses anything that has information that's helpful like this. And remember to source it. Some things we forget sometimes in our PowerPoint, just remember to source it, right, when you present it. And it's a very impressive source. So if you can't find the source, just put it all together. This is what we want to do with each call. Ideally, we would have a little bit more discussion on it. Like ideally, I would maybe highlight something in that learning that we could talk about, because there's so many things to talk about from publications. So that will be the last 5 minutes of our call, to always have a new resource that you can share and use in your own framework. And so just to go over our next steps. Oh yeah, and I have one more fun thing to share if you want to use it. But anyway, you're going to all get a little bit of time or assign other people to review the Data Action Cycle Playbook URL. We're going to get that out to you by Friday. It looks like there need to be some cleanup on it that hadn't happened yet. And you're going to be ready to share that experience of some sort on the next community practice call, and also on what your own data issue that you're facing that other people may be able to support some ideas on. So one other thing to look at, which is to me, I don't know how you'll apply it. We cannot apply this virtually, but you can apply this if you do your own type of data training, or you bring a group of people together for an afternoon and you plan something like we do in our data to action training. And this idea was in the New York Times recently in June 5th, and it's called EduCamps. It's out of the education policy field. And teachers are always doing professional development days, and so some very smart school systems figured out that teachers are the best teachers of what they know best. And so they took a whole afternoon and they block out the time, and the teachers actually get to decide what they want to teach, and the people who want to attend then go to that session. So this is the embodiment of everybody is a teacher, everybody is a student. So here you're going to have all of us, we want to build data capacities in our systems, and everyone that comes to your data training in Orlando or your data training in Richmond is going to have something they could teach. Even if you put this to a 15 or 20-minute block, right, and you set up these room numbers, people, they would sign up, they would actually post what they want to teach on, and then people would go to what they want to learn. And you could try this in a mini way. And it's something that I would love to do if I were in a place or position to do this. But that link to that article is there for you to think about for your own local training and how to apply it. And I want to say thank you. I think we kicked off a community practice that was way too much talking on my side, but we got a little bit going, right? Yay?
Yeah, in the spirit of community of practices, I've run unconferences before, so folks give me a shout out if that's a thing you're interested in.
Is that similar to what that EdCamp? We don't know what even you just said. Unconference, a lack of structure.
Yeah. That's the format that the ed conference, the education thing you showed me was.
Oh, fabulous. See? So maybe Tim wants to teach us that next time. More on that. Or we're gonna. I don't know who this global we is, but you all should have each other's email some way. Sarah, how do we do that? We'll get Rachel to do that. One of our coordinators who's not on the call because she had to go to Europe because her husband's sick. But we'll get out a format where you have everybody's email, name, and what connection they are to what part of the country. And then maybe that's a Google Doc, and people can also there it is. On a Google Doc, you can post what it is you're an expert in, and people can call you and contact. How about that? We start our own. Does that make sense, Tim? We could do that?
Absolutely.
Okay, fabulous. We're going to set that up. We're going to get the URLs out to you, and we're going to kick this off. And we'll figure out other ways to support the Community Connection web across each of you directly as we go forward. Yay. Okay, thank you. We're 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Damon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.